Very good evening again, sisters and brothers. Okay, the topic for this evening's discussion is when skillful means, which in Pali is, or Sanskrit is called upaya, when skillful means become slippery slopes in spiritual practice. What is the meaning of the topic, and why do I decide to choose this topic for our discussion this evening? Why this topic for discussion? The reason why I have chosen this topic for discussion is because of my own experience with some of our Dharma friends. Especially over the last several years, I migrated to Australia in year 1999, so 11 years ago. And when I left Singapore, I have, we have a lot of friends in the Buddhist circle. And after so many years, every time when I come back to Singapore, I meet up with them, just like the brothers and sisters in the Buddhist fellowship. But along the way, along the 10, 11 years, I have also encountered some very good friends who were at one time very devout Buddhists. Very, very devout Buddhists. They are very staunch supporter of the Buddhist community. But over the years, just like anything impermanent, they have changed. They have actually left, the practice of the Dhamma. Some of them become disillusioned. Some of them become confused, and some of them have this sense of being betrayed. And among some of the Dhamma friends, we sat down and then we discussed what actually led to some of our friends to be in that sort of situation. And the analysis and the final conclusion is that two things happened and that caused them to be like that. One is their inability to distinguish between skillful means, upaya, and the true teaching. Yeah, it's like they say, they mistaken the finger that points to the moon as the moon. So they mix up. So when we first become acquainted with Buddhism, we use a lot of the skillful means in our practice. But because we are so reliant on these skillful means, we assume that when we practice these skillful means, it will give us the results we want. But then, as we all know, the Dhamma taught us that, things are impermanent. So changes in our life, circumstances changes in our life, and for some of them, some of these changes were so drastic that they become disillusioned with the skillful means that they use in their practice, and then they lost faith in the Dhamma. Let me give a very simple example. For example, some of us who practice certain schools, of Buddhism, would rely on, say, mantra, chanting, as a form, as a skillful means. Please do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that these are wrong or right. Skillful means are skillful means. So if you rely on certain skillful means in your practice, and you thought that, I've been chanting this mantra for the last 20, 30 years, and then suddenly something happened in your life, big change, you then assume that the mantra that you were chanting is no longer effective. And then you start to lose faith. And this is what happens to a lot of practitioners who runs from one temple to another, seeking for the most effective, skillful means, but not realizing that skillful means are skillful means. They do not necessarily, solve your problem, so to speak. Yeah, they are just skillful means. They are just vehicles that actually help you in your practice. But because you're confused with the skillful means and the truth of the teaching, you then got mixed up and thinking that the skillful means is the one that actually betrayed you. So a lot of them, very, very sadly, I must say, some of them are very devout, some of them are very strong supporters, and because of the changes in their life, changes in their living circumstances, they just simply got so disillusioned that they in fact, some of them were even converted to other faith. Very sad, And some of them, of course, becomes very disappointed, and some of them even went in opposition, to the Dharma, because they thought that, they were betrayed, But actually, it wasn't the Dharma that betrayed them. It was their confusion with skillful means and the true teaching. So this is the reason why I chose this topic. The other reason is because if you look at the practices that we see today in the Buddhist community versus the true teaching of the Lord Buddha, you find that there's a big gap. Yeah, for those of you who follow the study of the sutra, and then when you start to read the sutra, and then you then look at what is being practiced in the Buddhist community, you'll be quite surprised. How come, there's a big gap in the sense that some of the practices was never mentioned in the sutra, right? So again, that is because of the different skillful means that had been, introduced by the teachers. But people who don't understand the differences, got confused. And this is the reason why I thought it's a good thing to bring this out for discussion this evening. Before I go into the discussion proper, I must acknowledge two teachers that I read and learned from the writings of these two teachers, the topic on skillful means. And one of them, of course, is lay teacher P.R. Tan. I'm sure some of you know him, and I think he runs sutra courses. And there was a very good article he wrote concerning skillful means and its significance. And for those of you, if you have a computer at home, you may want to go to the website dharmaferrer.org and then look for the topic on skillful means, and you can download his article. Very, very useful. The other one is by the late Venerable Master In Shun, but this one is in Chinese, and I have the benefit because I read Chinese. So when I read In Shun Tao Si, we call him In Shun Tao Si, great Venerable Master In Shun, he wrote a lot of books, and among the books he wrote, Hua Yi Ji, there's a chapter on Fan Bian Zhi Tao, skillful means. Yeah, and you can read a lot about, what is the meaning of skillful means, how skillful means came about, what are some of the dangers, when you abuse skillful means. So from these two teachers, I got the inspiration for tonight's discussion with all of you. Okay, first let's start off with the meaning of skillful means. Now, there are two explanation for skillful means. One is by this author Edward Conze. In a short history of Buddhism, he says, skill in means is the ability to bring out the spiritual potentialities of different people by statements or action which are adjusted to their needs and adapted to their capacity for comprehension. That's one way to look at skillful means. Another way to look at skillful means is a teacher's willingness to adapt him or herself to the interests, needs, and level of understanding of others in order to be able to successfully communicate the Dharma to them. So this is the meaning of the term skillful means. In other words, it's like tools that we use to help people better understand, the very profound teaching of the Buddha. Now, skillful means actually originated from the day of the Buddha. Let me go to the next slide. The origin of skillful means. Now, for those of you who have read the sutra, you'll probably come across this story. And that was when the Buddha became enlightened. For a moment, he thought he's going to keep his discovery to himself. For a simple reason, because he found what he discovered to be so profound, so difficult to understand, that he thought nobody would be able to understand it if he were to, share it with other people. And then, according to the sutra, one of the Brahma came from the heavenly realm and came down and actually appealed to the Buddha to continue to teach and said, look, Lord Buddha, if you refuse to teach, then, this is the end of the world. The sentient being in this world is going to suffer, and there's no hope, for them. So he has appealed to the Buddha's compassion. And then the Buddha later on, with his so-called divine eyes, wisdom eyes, scan the world and see the sentient beings of different nature. And this is what the sutra says, just as in the lotus pond of the blue or white or red lotuses, some lotuses might be, born in the water, grown up in the water, thrive or submerged in the water. So in other words, what he's trying to say is, if you read the whole paragraph, what the Buddha is trying to express is that among the sentient beings, there are some with little dust on their eyes, there are some with more dust on their eyes, there are some that are covered with too much dust on their eyes, but at least because of his compassion to want to share his discovery with the sentient being. So he said, at least for the people who has little little dust in their eyes, just like some of the lotus flowers that actually grown out of the water, will be able to understand his teaching. So this story began with the origin of the skillful means, how the Buddha used skillful means out of compassion. Although the teaching can be very difficult, but the Buddha is trying to do his best to put it in different ways so that people could understand the teaching. So this is the origin of the skillful means. Yeah. So bear in mind that skillful means originated because of the compassion of the Buddha, who wanted to make sure that people could benefit from his own understanding of the Dhamma. Okay, so this is the origin of skillful means. Now, skillful means of the Buddha. So, in the early days, early Buddhism, the early Buddhist conception of skillful means is wisdom and moral virtue in action through compassion. Because of the compassionate desire to want to share the noble teaching with sentient being, the Buddha finds ways and means, although the teaching could be so difficult, so profound, but trying to find ways and means so that he can get across to some of the people, and then so that they can benefit from it. All right. Here, compassion is what moves the Buddha and should move us too, in applying skillful means. Wisdom is the skillful aspect where the Buddha naturally knows what to teach or do to uplift a person or his audience spiritually. Yeah, this is a situational skill. It's just like a good communicator. A good communicator will be able to mobilize the crowd, the audience. by using different ways of conveying the message, and depending on which sort of audiences, a good communicator will tailor the way he expresses himself so that the audience will be able to understand him clearly. So this is what the Buddha is doing out of compassion, yeah. But not forgetting the fact that the Buddha still keeps wisdom as the prime mover, compassion as, of course, as the motivation, but wisdom as the prime goal, and sila, in other words, morality. So very much in early days, the Buddha never deviated from the precepts, or from the moral teaching, although he uses skillful means. Then, in later development, the Mahayana school came into being. And as all of you know, in the Mahayana school teaching, the Bodhisattva idea, is most prominent. And the Bodhisattva idea rests on the great compassion to want to bring every sentient being to liberation. In other words, they want to make sure that every sentient being has the opportunity to understand the Dhamma and practice the Dhamma so that they can become liberated, they can attain Nirvana. So with that Bodhisattva ideal, the Mahayana Buddhists came up with this idea of skillful means as a good quality of a Bodhisattva. And in fact, in the Mahayana practice, skillful means becomes more prominent, much more prominent than in the Theravada school, because of the Bodhisattva idea. So, and this is reflected in the Lotus Sutra. So some of you have read the Lotus Sutra. You see a lot of parables, examples, stories that actually expresses the skillfulness of the Bodhisattva. There was this story about the father went home and saw the house on fire, and then the children were playing in the house, and the children were also obsessed with their own toys, and the father wanted to get the children to get out of the burning house for fear that they will be burnt alive. But no matter how, the children refused to leave because they are so obsessed with the toys. So what did the father do? The father then told a lie, told the children that there are some more, attractive toys outside the house, all right? So that his children are then diverted, So they then left the house on fire, and they went to outside, and their lives are safe. But when they were outside, they discovered that there were no attractive toys. It was a lie told by the father. But the father did that just to save the lives of the children. So this is an example of skillful means, even to the extent of breaking the precept of telling a lie. These are some examples of the Mahayana skillful means. I think a lot of them can be read in the Lotus Sutra. A lot of parables and stories. Okay, the necessity for the application of skillful means. The reason why skillful means, I said earlier on, came into being is because by nature, the Dhamma, as discovered by the Buddha himself, is simply too profound. It's so profound that it is not easy for people to understand, ordinary person to understand. And because of that, the path to liberation, the doctrine that led to liberation, is so profound that it's very difficult for people to understand. That's one reason why there's a need to tailor the teaching differently so that people can understand. So that's how prompted the Buddha to use skillful means. Similarly, in the Mahayana way of paramatthas, as you all know, if you read the teaching of the Mahayana Buddhists, the 6 paramatthas, perfection in the practice. These are very ideal, but it's very difficult to really put into practice. So in order for the teachers to get across to the students, they have again to use some sort of skillful means. So this is the reason why skillful means becomes necessary even in the early Buddhism, so as in Mahayana Buddhism later on. Okay. The classification of Buddhist doctrines. For the last time when I gave a talk here, I did touch on the different classification of how the Nikayas were classified differently according to the level of understanding of the students. And this classification actually was done by the Tipitaka master Buddhaghosa, which, by the way, is a very renowned Theravadan teacher. And even in his commentary about the Nikayas, he classified them into 4 different levels, yeah, because of the different characteristic of people and the different depth of the people's understanding. And these Nikayas were actually structured in such a way so that depending on the depth of understanding of the audience, these Nikayas are therefore presented, in different levels, so that people could understand them from one level to another. And this was deliberately done as a way of skillful means. Likewise, in the Mahayana teaching, they have this called 4 Siddhanta. And these 4 Siddhanta were mentioned during the time of this famous Mahayana teacher, Nagarjuna. He advocated, the 4 different approaches to bringing the Dhamma to the people. And the 4 approaches again, to tailor to the different mood of the students. The supreme meaning, the perfect and highest truth, which is the most difficult, are reserved for those who have very good understanding. The therapeutic diagnostic treatment method for those who have personal problems, specific problems that they want to, in life, that they want to find some remedy. They use this sort of method, to reach out to the students. And then the other method is the individual adaptation, adapting to each individual student's ability to understand. And then the last but not least is the worldly, mundane, ordinary language where people would understand. So these are some of examples of skillful means in the early days. Yeah. In particular, when Buddhism came to China, and as all of you know, the Chinese culture is one of the strongest culture in the world, because it's so rich, and it has 5,000 years of history. But even during the time of the Buddha, it was already about 2,000, 3,000 years of Chinese culture already in China. So when Buddhism goes into China, encountering a very strong culture, there is no way to transmit the teaching into the Chinese people using the Indian background. So it had to be done through the Chinese culture. And this is how Chinese Buddhism evolved into a lot of skillful means. And so much so that if you look at some of the picture, like for example the wooden fish, it is not in the original Buddhism. It's a Chinese product. Yeah, it's actually a Chinese cultural product, but it's used as a skillful means in the practice of Chinese Buddhism. So is the other picture, a lot of blessing ceremonies and all that. Some of which, if you trace back to the early Buddhism in India, it was never practiced. It was part of Chinese culture. But skillful means was historically the approach that allowed Chinese Buddhism to incorporate and make sense of all of the Indian Buddhist teaching. This is true for most East Asian schools of Mahayana Buddhism, even so in India, in Japan, even so in Korea. You go to Japan, the way the Japanese practice Buddhism, a lot of them are Japanese culture. Same with the Koreans, yeah, because these are strong cultures, and in order for the Dharma to be transmitted, you cannot just transmit just as it was, you know. You have to tailor it to suit the cultural background of the different countries and different people. So this is how skillful means become very strong. But the problem is, because of the strong culture and the necessity to transmit the Dharma using the various skillful means over the years, it developed into the formation of various schools, lineages, even to the extent of sectarian emphasis. And this is the result of the application of skillful means. Yeah? Please bear in mind, I'm not making any judgment whether it's right or wrong, whether one is truth teaching, the other one is false teaching. No. There is no such thing as, if you look at the different schools of Buddhism, there's no such thing as false or true teaching unless they really deviate from the basic tenet of the Dhamma. But simply whether they are conventional teaching or absolute teaching, you know. But it's not a question of false or true. It's a question of whether it's conventional. Conventional meaning because of the use of skillful means. Okay, so they make it very mundane. They make it very universal. Whereas the teaching may carry the absolute truth, but the absolute truth is not being brought to the surface. Yeah. Whereas for some other schools, the emphasis may be more on the absolute truth. I'm going to go into that later, but just to make sure that I'm not being judgmental to say that this, because of the use of this skillful means, to tailor to the culture, therefore they are less true than the other schools. It's not that. It's because of the need to use skillful means. Okay. All right. Now we come to this very important concept, which is called the two truths. The Buddha's teaching of the Dhamma is based on two truths: a truth of the worldly convention and an ultimate truth. Those who do not understand the distinction drawn between these two truths do not understand the Buddha's profound truth. Without a foundation in the conventional truth, the significance of the ultimate cannot be taught. Without understanding the significance of the ultimate, liberation is not achieved. This is an extract from the writings of Nagarjuna, which is a very prominent Mahayana teacher. What he's trying to say is that essentially we are living in a dualistic world, yeah? and it has two truths: conventional and absolute. You cannot do one without the other. If you try to just focus on the ultimate truth, you can never get across things to people, because we all live in a mundane, conventional world. So in order to get the message across, we have to use conventional wisdom. Yeah. So at the same time, you cannot just do with conventional wisdom and forget about the ultimate truth, because if that's the case, you never reach the goal of nirvana. Yeah. Excuse me. You need the ultimate truth to be able to be liberated. But ultimate truth cannot be easily taught, so you need to use conventional truth. So these two are like two wings of the bird. Yeah. So let me go to, if those of you who can read Chinese, This is the Chinese version of just now what I said, yeah? Talking about the two truths. And these two truths has to be used simultaneously. You can't do one without the others. So if you can read Chinese, you can go to some of the writings and read about them. Okay, let me explain by a metaphor. Absolute truth is like pure gold, yeah. Pratna, wisdom, absolute truth, like pure gold, extracted from the gold mine. But just giving people this gold ingot is of no use, you know. You can't. What can you do with a gold ingot except to put in the safe, yeah? But upaya, skillful means, with conventional truth, is like ornaments made from the gold. Yeah, you make ornaments and then you can wear earrings, chain, bracelets, you know. Then it becomes useful. Yeah, but not forgetting the fact that when you make gold, when you take the pure gold and make into ornaments, while you're making into ornaments, there's a need to add additives. Yeah, because otherwise it cannot be craft, you know. Because in order to craft all kinds of monuments, you've got to add other metals, so that it becomes much more malleable, much more easier to be crafted. Otherwise, you know, gold by itself, you know, may not be able to make into so many things. But then when that happens, the ornaments becomes the decorative stuff, and of course attract people, and people love it. Yeah, but a lot of times you forget about the fact that these ornaments are not necessarily the same as pure gold, because of the fact that there are so many processes, additives, you know, impurities that were added. So this is just a metaphor, all right? But you can't do one without the other, because if you do one without the other, then people cannot benefit from the Dhamma, right? So now it begs the question, yeah? Skillful means, does it mean that the end justify the means? In other words, you know, in the past few slides, I've been talking about the necessity for skillful means, out of compassion. We want to bring the message to the teaching to the ordinary people, and therefore we got to find ways and means, you know. But does it mean that the end justify the means? In other words, so long as the person gets, you know, the message, it doesn't matter how we use skillful means. Yeah. Now this verse from one of the sutra, by deliberately becoming courtesan to attract men, enticing them with the last hook, they establish them in the Buddha knowledge. There is famous quotation in the Mahayana Chinese sutra. Yeah. 先以义勾牵, if you can understand Chinese, 后令入佛智. It's just like, first you hook the person with desire, yeah, and then later on hoping that once he comes in to the fold of the teaching, he or she will learn the true teaching, you know, and then therefore attain the goal of being enlightened. Yeah. So this is very well said in some of the writings in Mahayana, as well as the early sutras of the Theravada teaching. But does it mean that therefore the end justify the means? No. Let's go on. Okay. Wisdom and skillful means, prajna and upaya. Prajna without upaya can only be realized by a few. I was saying earlier on that since the teaching is very profound, and if you just take absolute truth and you try to teach, you know, without using skillful means, it's very difficult. Very few people can understand unless you are in previous life you were already, you know, practicing, you know, and maybe after so many lives, when you come into this being, you are already half enlightened. And then when in fact you got in touch with some of the teachings, you become fully enlightened. And it happened to some of the great teachers, that when they first come into contact with the Dhamma, they were so enlightened. They could understand it so fast, and in a very short time they become very great teachers. If you look at some of the biography of some of the great Buddhist teachers, some of them are like that, but very few. Unfortunately, very few. Upaya without prajna, skillful means without wisdom, becomes obstacles to the goal of attaining liberation. Because then, I was saying, you get confused, you get mistaken, thinking that this is the one that, and then worst of all, people become addicted. Yeah, people become addicted with certain practice, and then without the practice, they are lost. Or even with the practice, something change in their life. They blame it on the skillful means, thinking that the skillful means is not doing him a favor, and then they lost faith. So it's very difficult. Only when both prajna and upaya must function together. It's just like the pair of wings on the birds, or you can see the picture there, just like the two oars of a boat. You can't do with one. Yeah, you can't do with the other. You got to have both. Yeah, so it got to have balance. The same thing like we were saying about conventional truth and absolute truth. Now, this is where skillful means becomes very dangerous. The abuse of compassion begets disaster, and the rampant use of skillful means begets licentiousness. Licentiousness is like corruption in moral quality, corruption in immorality. There's a Chinese saying, 慈悲多祸害，方便出下流. Because if you abuse skillful means, and there's a tendency, if you are very observant, and if you are mindful, you find that in some practices, the overuse of skillful means, skillful means end up in very very bad consequences, very bad consequences, and anything that is seen to be deviating from the true teaching of the Buddha, they pass it off as skillful means. If you question the teacher and say, why are you doing this? This is wrong. This is not according to the Buddha's teaching. They say, oh, no, this is skillful means. This is skillful means. And everything is like using skillful means as an excuse to cover their shortcoming. Yeah. And then the other problem with the use of skillful means is trying to be all embracing, trying to be all harmonious. In other words, it's okay, we will embrace you, we will include you, we will be all inclusive. And what happens? It created confusion, ambiguity, and then it leads to falsehood. So you cannot tell the difference between true teaching and false teaching. It's all mixed up, because sometimes skillful means allow all sort of practice. It's just like a very good example is like you walk into a temple which is called a Buddhist temple, but inside there are all the other deities, Taoist deities. Some of them got even other religious symbols in there, maybe Hindu gods, goddesses. And then if you ask the person in charge, he says, oh no, we are trying to embrace, you're trying to, so and anyway, we are all the same. And this is the danger. Yeah. And this is a problem with Eastern tolerance and magnanimity. Eastern philosophy, Eastern culture tend to be very magnanimous, especially Chinese. And because of that, we embrace too many differences. And as a result, the distinctiveness and the noble character of the Buddha Dhamma is lost. So you very often hear people say, actually we are the same, I give a very good example, some of you may be familiar with Yikuan Tao, Tian Tao, yeah? I'm not again passing judgment, but if you look at Tian Tao, the way they practice, they also got Guan Yin, they also got Mitra Buddha, So if you are, a Chinese Buddhist, you say, yeah, actually we are quite the same, because you pray to Kuan Yin, we also pray to Kuan Yin. You pray to Maitreya Buddha, we also pray to Maitreya. And they use the same sutra, by the way. But at the end of the day, without going deeper into analyzing the distinctiveness, of their practice, on the surface you thought they are the same, and then people will look at you as you are the same as them, So the unique character of the Buddha's teaching is lost. There's one very distinctive quality of Buddhism, which no other religions share the same doctrine. Yeah, and these are not brought up when you got this problem. Skillful means too many, skillful means too many, all embracing. But you start to analyze, then you realize that, Buddhism stands up, as a very profound, very noble, very distinctive, shall I say, philosophy and a way of life, and even beyond religion. But this has been lost because of all these practices that embraces, the conventional truth and all that, unfortunately. Okay? Now, when skillful means becomes slippery slope means you go down, instead of going up. When you do spiritual practice, you are supposed to progress, from beginner, from the first jhana to second jhana to third jhana. You should progress, But if you are not careful, you could be so addicted to skillful means, and skillful means can become slippery slopes. That means you go all the way down. When will skillful means become slippery slopes? When you start to look for easiest way to practice. So there's this such thing as instant enlightenment. Oh, you don't have to do anything. You come to me, I'm the guru. I touch your head, I bless you with some magical water. You chant this. You go home, you practice this mantra, instant enlightenment. Once you get into that sort of mode, slippery slope. Fastest path to enlightenment, quick cure, quick, all encompassing in doctrine. No need. Too many Buddha teaching, so many sutras. How are you going to learn? 4 Nikayas, the volumes are so much. No need. You just learn one book. This is a book. The others, don't worry. Because this book that I ask you to learn covers everything else. Yeah? They call it all encompassing. Once you fall into that sort of trap, slippery slope. Yeah? We say quick cure. Yeah? One instant result, instant coffee, yeah? And then a panacea, yeah? Cure all. It doesn't matter which sickness, once you are in this mode, which skillful means you finish. You will never progress spiritually. You'll never be able to get near the pure goal. You miss the pure goal. And this is where a lot of people, I was saying earlier on, some of my Dharma friends, 30 years, very devoted, very devout. During times when he was very successful, he gave millions of dollars to temples. Donations. You go to some of the temples here in Singapore, these big pillars, his name is there. But today, he's no more a Buddhist because somehow he relies so much on skillful means, and when circumstances beyond his control, got nothing to do with the teaching of the Dharma or the Buddha. Circumstances beyond control, impermanence, the world economy changes, his business collapses. Yeah? And then he tried to use back the skillful means, the Sifu that taught him, you go deep back, you chant, you do this, you do that, It didn't work. It didn't work anymore. Then he get disillusioned. Then he gets so frustrated. Yeah? And then he thought that, I think in that case Buddhism is useless. It's not Buddhism is useless, it's because the skillful means he was using was wrongly understood. If he had gone further and understand the Dhamma, he would have understood why. What caused his downfall. Yeah, and the problem with human nature is that when you fail, you try to look for a scapegoat. You try to look for some excuses instead of reflecting on yourself and be realistic with the circumstances. Yeah, if he had learned the Dharma, he would have known impermanence is a nature of life. Yeah. Secondly, he would have probably analyzed and said that maybe his greed was the one that causes it, because if he had not overcommitted to certain things, he would not have gone into this financial disaster. But no, people don't think that way. You see. These practices that I used to practice, make me rich. But how come now it doesn't make me rich? So therefore, it must be, so some people will jump from one temple to another looking for the right teacher, looking for the right miracles. Some will convert, Some go to Hinduism, some go to, different other religious faith, yeah. Baha'i, some go for Sai Baba, and you'll be surprised, a lot of them are in this sort of trap. And this is because of not understanding skillful means and slippery slope. The finger pointing at the moon is not the moon, I was saying earlier on. See, skillful means are just like craft, the raft I was showing some pictures about. When you want to cross a river, what do? You either swim across, but when it's too dangerous to swim across, you have to use a transport means, whether a boat or a raft. And the boat or the raft are the one that helps you to get from one shore to another. But just like the finger pointing at the moon, yeah? Because in order for you to see the moon, you need the finger to point at the moon, otherwise you don't know where the moon is. But you've mistaken the finger as the moon. Yeah, this is a very famous Zen saying, So the Buddhist notion of expedient or skillful means does not signify ethical relativism or nihilism, but the situation-oriented appropriateness. It's a very important concept. Skillful means were used because of the need to help the person. But skillful means does not mean everything else is this way of doing things, or you can forget about ethics, you can forget about, all other consideration. The whole point is that it's driven by compassion. Compassion is the central virtue of perfection to be cultivated and spontaneously generated. This responsive spontaneity overrides moral rules. Sometimes because of the need to help or save somebody, sometimes the moral rules are being overridden. Have you heard of crazy wisdom? Huh? Yeah, if you read some of the Buddhist stories from the past teachers, you find that there's this thing called crazy wisdom, where you find that these teachers behave in a very, especially in Zen Buddhism, all the koans, all the koans, yeah? The koans are used as skillful means to bring out the most potential in the student. And some of these teachers behave in a very awkward way, and you thought that that monk is a crazy monk. Yeah, this is called crazy wisdom. Yeah, this is what's going to say. But that crazy wisdom are used based on situation. So it cannot be used like, in every other case. Yeah, and people sometimes misunderstood that, thinking that it's okay. Yeah, so if the teacher does that once, it's okay for him to do it all over again. Not necessary. Yeah. What I like to now come to is now I talk a lot about skillful means, its usefulness, why is it introduced, how did it come about, and then we talk about the danger of skillful means. Now, the question now is, there are so many practices out there that are skillful means. Now, how do I know whether they are good skillful means or they are dangerous skillful means? We use what I call the go tester. And the go tester is just a testing whether the go is pure or not. Yeah. I would use this as a guideline. The wider the disparity between skillful means and the absolute truth is what? The Dharma, the three Dharma seals. Yeah, all schools of Buddhism cannot deviate from the fundamental teaching of the Buddha. The three Dharma seals. What are they? Suffering, dukkha, right? Impermanence, non-self. Sometimes they add another one, nirvana. In the case of Mahayana teaching, they got four. So they put dukkha and in the impermanence together, so it becomes three for them, but actually four. So dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, impermanence, non-self, right? These are the universal characteristics of all existence. If the skillful means that you are practicing does not conform to that fundamental truth, watch out. Right? After I'm going to give you some examples. The further they are from the true teaching of the Buddha, based on this assessment, one is able to discern the purity and authenticity of the practice. All right? I'll give you an example afterwards. Go tester number 2. When skillful means goes against the doctrine of self-reliance and the law of karma, and reinforces blind faith and fatalism, they become fetters, obstacles to spiritual development. So early on I was talking about the three Dharma seal and the doctrine of dependent origination as the core teaching of the Buddha. Any skillful means, you test it against this doctrine. If it doesn't conform, be careful. Same thing with the law of karma and self-reliance. Yeah. So, open discussion. Let me give you some examples. I have some examples here. For example, very often you find people, devotees, come to the temple and they want to get a Buddha statue home to their house, if they are new Buddhists. And very often you find that they go to, I think in the case of Mahayana temples very often, they go to a Sifu and ask the Sifu, can you please help me open the eyes of the Buddha statue? Open the divine eyes. Yeah. Now I can tell you, most venerables, because knowing the psychology of the devotees, will say, okay, I do it for you. Then they will, whatever, some rituals, and then the fellow is happy, bring the Buddha home. Oh, my Buddha, kai kwang le, okay, Alright? So this is an example of skillful means. Now, if the venerable had been a good teacher, the venerable will say, look, there's no necessity for that, yeah, because what is more important is the kai kwang means to open your wisdom. So you don't worry, bring this Buddha home, yeah, at most to satisfy him, like what we usually do. Ajahn Brahm does it, to just bless the Buddha statue, yeah, do a little chanting. Bless the Buddha statue. You bring home, you're happy. At the same time, just to remind you that more importantly this is the beginning of opening up your wisdom. Yeah, that's more important. So this is an example of skillful means. Now how do I test certain practices that can be what I call dangerous? That's against the that becomes a slippery slope. I got some case studies here. Say, for example, if you go to see a venerable and you say, Venerable Sir, I'm going to buy a new house. Could you come to my place and take a look at the German Sea? Yeah. take a look at German Sea. And the person is probably very disturbed, he's worried, because, he wants to make sure that feng shui, German Sea is going here. Now, I personally witnessed very good teachers. Many years back, I used to be a volunteer at the Singapore Buddhist Welfare Services at Punggol. And there used to be a famous teacher called Yempe Fasu. I don't know whether you know, Venerable Yempe. And I was there and I heard it myself. People who come to see him and talk about feng shui, this is the message he gave to them. If you are a kind person with a good heart, you will always have the blessing of a good house. So there's no need for you to go and consult a German Sea. Very good teacher. And this is what he will tell the devotee. Yeah. On the reverse, if you have a teacher who wants to use skillful means, don't worry, I come with you. Right? Go to the house, look up and down, this, that, and then give him, give the devotee some advice. I think you should make sure that your door goes that way, not this way, and all that. What happens? The devotee becomes reliant on that belief, And the next time something happens, he go back and see the Sifu again. Hey, Sifu, I know now recently I got this problem. My son always falls sick, So what do I do now? Do I now open up the window, or open up the roof, or whatever? And then it goes on. So it becomes very addictive. Now what happens now? The skillful means becomes slippery slope. Yeah. So where does the skillful means ends is where you start to do the go test. Yeah? Another good example, about house cleansing. There are people who move house, they bring the Sifu to the house, they do chanting and all that. Well and good, but if a good Sifu will usually, a good venerable will explain to you and say, it's human that everybody wants blessing, and blessing comes only when you do good deeds. Yeah, I think that will go a long way in helping the person understand the Dhamma. But if it's just a matter of reliance on thinking that there will be some, external power trying to bless you, then you got a problem. Yeah. I was on the internet and I find that these days because of IT, they have online blessing offerings. You can go to the internet, you click on, and then they got this. What I call a picture of a bag of rice, a picture with tins of canned food, a picture with a bouquet of lotus flower, $10, $20, $50, and then you click and you do an online offering. Yeah, very strange. Yeah, but this is again, if you can talk to the person in charge, they will say, skillful means, because people are so busy, they can't come to the temple. So we want to make it easy for them online, But what is the difference between doing things like this and making a donation, just simple donation, or doing a charity, Doing a charity. Yeah, among the Chinese culture, ancestor worship is, of filial piety. Filial piety is a very important aspect of our culture. So we like sometimes to accumulate merits for our ancestors, our forefathers and all that. And very often you find big temples do these sort of blessings. I'm not saying that right or wrong. I'm saying that while they want to grant the wishes of the devotees, they have a responsibility to make sure that the devotees understand the meaning of those rituals. Yeah, what is the difference between taking the name of your loved one who passed on, and then you go to a charity of your choice, be it Cancer Society, or be it a new Dhamma group that want to set up a new temple and needs fundraising, and put their names, Mr. So-and-so, Madam So-and-so, in memory of Madam So-and-so, and make a $500 donation, right, to a charity, or give $100 to a temple, and then they do the transference of merit, which is more meaningful. So this is where the skillful means comes in, if the transference of merit ceremony is used as a ritual, for the good feeling or the psychological need of the devotee, well and good. But the problem is that once this practice is done, it becomes a reliance, Like, if anything goes wrong, I must go back and do the same thing all over again, I've seen, I'd be surprised, one of my close friends who happened to, when I say this, I'm not saying that the practice is wrong or the school of practice is wrong. He happened to practice at Tibetan school, and he's very close to a Rinpoche, and because he had difficult times, and the Rinpoche actually helped him with counseling and all that, and he actually pulled through difficult times, and he's very grateful to the teacher. So much so that he's so reliant that every time when he want to travel, he checked with the Rinpoche, can I fly next week, Venerable? Can I, can you imagine, once you are in that mode, slippery slope, you are trapped. Can my son go to this school? Go and ask the Rinpoche, What? You see, this is the problem. See, when skillful means is against the law of karma, cause and effect. What has that got to do with cause and effect? Yeah? It got no relationship, isn't it? It got no relationship. Becomes fortune telling, becomes fatalism, it's totally against the teaching of the Buddha. So when that happens, you've got to remind yourself, I don't think I want to rely on this sort of skillful means, So these are some examples. I'm sure you, in your own experience, you have some similar examples, Horoscopes, whether you're born in what year, what year of the ox or year of the tiger, you go there, you pray to the animal, and then you get blessings and all that. It's totally against the law of karma, the cause and effect. Yeah, and so much for. But having said all that, I want to also give skillful means some compliment. The positive side of skillful means. The practice of skillful means reminds us to listen to others respectfully, honor their differences, and recognize that others may have different needs and benefit from different teachings and practices. Following the model of the Bodhisattva of compassion, we must not be self-righteous, cling to any particular method. We can learn various useful approaches, and as we learn to trust and respond with whatever is at hand, our skillfulness can develop. A very good example is the Mahayana concept of Kuan Yin, Avalokitesvara, the goddess of mercy, so to speak. For thousands of years, the Kuan Yin has been instrumental in providing solace, peace of mind, and also comfort to a lot of people. Yeah, but and who are we to say that believing in Kuan Yin is not true teaching, it's false teaching, Except that you must understand the concept. I used to do volunteer work in Australia, and these white Aussies, white Australians, they don't know anything about Asian cultures. So they come to the temple, Mahayana temple, and they see this Kuan Yin statue with 1,000 arms. Yeah, with 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes, and with all the different things they hold. And one of the questions they will ask is, what is this, why is this Buddha, they call it Buddha, with so many arms, And you have to explain to them so that it makes sense. And usually this is what I tell them. The 1,000 arms of the Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, or the Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva, is nothing more than a metaphorical expression of her compassion. Because she is so compassionate, she wants to reach out. So how do I express her compassion? How do I express her great compassion? 1,000 arms. So at any moment, she can reach out, to 1,000 people. In other words, it expresses her compassion to want to help as many people as possible. So if you put that in perspective, then people, even the white Aussies will not say that you're superstition. Oh, now I understand. So this is not superstition. This is just metaphorical expression. Yeah. In fact, it's a very good concept. It's a good ideal for people. So skillful means a way of respecting the pluralism of all religions, traditions, all religious traditions in our contemporary global interconnectedness. All traditions may be equally respected for the value of their teachings as they apply to different people, particularly approaches to ultimate religious truth and to primary principles such as kindness and compassion. In fact, if those of you who read the writings of Venerable Master In Sun, there's a book called The Way to Buddhahood. There's an English version. You should read the book. And he actually explains very clearly. Because of the different makeup of different individuals, some people are more prone to practice certain way, right? And there are different steps of practices. Some are more prone to trying to rationalize things. Some are more faith inclined. So they are not wrong. These are ways to help them. Yeah. So there is positive side of skillful means, but you have to bear in mind the danger. Okay. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Unless you have any question.
Okay. Let's sadhu. Okay. Brothers and sisters, anybody got any questions?
Anybody has any question?
Or anything you'd like to share? But one thing, the last trip we went to Malacca, what Ajahn Brahm said is that, if you have your grounding in Buddhism, there's no way anybody can sway to any other faith. Okay, it's only those who have no grounding in Buddhism, Buddhist concept, that you get swayed. So it's not that the people who are converted, but in the other words is that their grounding is not strong. That's why any small little streams or any small little flood, they will get swept away. But if your grounding is very strong, no way can you be converted anytime, anywhere. Okay? So, any questions? Anybody?
Brother Paul, maybe very good point. May I add this, that in fact, if you all have the opportunity, try to spend some time with the study of the sutras. I think that will ground you very well. And do not underestimate, the simple teachings that is contained in the Nikayas, the sutra. They may appear to be very basic, but they are the very foundation. If you don't have the foundation, it's very difficult to build a building, So you must, like what Brother Paul said, you ground yourself very properly, proper understanding. And then no matter, whatever skillful mean comes along, you are not being, distracted. Yeah.
Old Buddhists, Lao Fusa, being converted to Christian, or some of those I wouldn't say that they have went to a lot of Buddhist temples for many years, but suddenly when that Mr. Tan, he came back, he said, hey, how come all my friends, a few of them get converted to Christian? Ask the question why, So it's just like you ask, those people when they went to Buddhist temple, are they San Tzu Xiang, like a 3 joss stick? Buddhist or what. If you are like that, then you go inside, you have all the skillful means. People promise you heaven on earth, straight away you are taken in already. So that's why it's all depending on your own practice, whether you believe in all this kind of thing, instant cure, instant medicine. Once you believe, then that's it. Nothing can help you. How many Dhamma talk also no use. Okay. And one of the things I like just want to add is that, in a lot of, don't mind, I just add one thing. Praying, a lot of people, they are in any Chinese family, we put in Kuan Yin. Actually, Kuan Yin, the Chinese saying is that, 我们学佛不是拜佛. 学佛 that means you learn. Learn Buddhism, not pray. And Kuan Yin, what does it represent? 慈悲, that means compassion. If you have the compassion of the Bodhisattva, Avalokitesvara, then what happens is that whatever that you do, you'll be safe. That's why, people say that when you put Kuan Yin inside, your house, if you pray to Kuan Yin, 出入平安. Actually, no. 学佛, then 出入平安. 不是拜佛, 出入平安. 学佛, that means if you have compassion in your heart, whatever that you do, I think you'll be safe in whatever, places that you go. That's what I always tell, some of my friends, who believe in all, who, pray, but, what's the point? When you pray and then you practice very differently when once you're outside your house. So how can you be safe? Cannot be safe. You pray one thing and then you go outside do another. How can you be safe? You cannot be safe. So I think that's a very basic. So that's why Kuan Yin is very good. I mean, if you venerate the qualities of Kuan Yin, but not pray the Kuan Yin, then I think that is a very simple, basic. I think tonight's topic is very appropriate for a lot of us Buddhists, because basically it tells you the skillful means that people use, but don't forget, once you across the river, you got to throw away the sampan. You don't carry the sampan and walk. That's what Buddha said, right?
In my slides you saw some pictures, This guy is carrying the crab over his head, Because once you across the river, why you want to carry it over your head? And some people, instead of using the crab to cross the river, they keep on carrying over their head. Yeah, there are some like that.
Yeah.
So they get nowhere. So either they get nowhere or they get so attached, and never let go. And once something happens, for example, they carry the craft and then they walk another short distance and then they find a mountain. So when you find a mountain, it's an obstacle, right? You have to clear. So what is the point of having the craft? So then they get disillusioned. Now the craft is not able to help me. This is similar to those people who think that I've been a Buddhist for so many years. I've been giving donations. I've been praying. I've been doing this, doing that. And then why all of a sudden something happened to me? Yeah, the distinctiveness of Buddhism, the Dhamma, what is taught by the Buddha, which no other religion ever said, is this: that life is unsatisfactory. All other religions tell you, don't worry, you will be blessed, you will be this, you will be that, and then when you leave this world, you go to this place called, heaven. No other religion tells you very frankly, very realistically, that life is never satisfactory. Only the Buddha. But people cannot accept, because bad news, man. You tell me life is not. But unfortunately, this is the fact. This is the fact. What the Buddha is not trying to say that you cannot enjoy your life or you cannot have a good life. You can, but you must be prepared to accept the fact that the reality of life is unsatisfactory, because it will come to an end, no matter what. Yeah, you look at what happened. You can be an emperor, you can be the president, you can be the prime minister. When age catches up with you, that's it. You cannot avoid. So it's a fact of life. So yeah. Any questions? Any comments? Yeah. Any comments? Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Before we end, okay.